Coming full circle, coming home, a symbolical journey. Alice, I remember, said something like, "You're nothing but a pack of cards." And I realized that part of the unintentional genius of what has been mentoring me over the years is that in the journey of the creation of the wheel of the tarot and the journey of the tarot, it also will tell us a story that I really wanted to know why I could never create a color tarot. I couldn't use color symbolically. I didn't want to at any rate, because I think that that would be imposing something, not allowing it to be speaking for itself. So I created a black and white tarot. And I also couldn't create a magician, because usually a magician is what opens the tarot, because for whatever reason, it didn't feel right. But now, as we come full circle, as we come home, as we start to see that which has manifested over the years, we have a symbolical structure that can help us understand why it's a seed and not a magician, not a trickster, it's a Magus. Because this is the journey of life. And a lot of us that have spent time with, let's say, Carl Jung and reading about psychology and depth psychology and archetype and myth, begin to try to understand, well, how does this journey involve me? What is the point of its story? And the story here is structure. And why the circle? Why the wheel? Why is this important? Because it helps us understand that as in life, as with the seasons, that we have a winter, spring, summer, and fall. We have air, earth, fire, and water. We journey through the days, through the years, through the months, in a direction. We are following the path, the turning path. And so the question is, when we look at nature or growth, we realize that although things evolve, they evolve within the context of their operating system. A bit like you'd say that the flower is not going to become a tree. It's going to evolve to the point where its blossom reveals its purpose, as opposed to if it were a tree, its fruit might do the same thing. And why we look at this as a journey, if we look as our first journey outward is a seed. We're born into the world of time and condition. And we're babies, so we're taking that step as 1-year-old to 2-year-old to 3-year-old to 4-year-old. And although we seem to be going in a line, getting somewhere, we're actually moving in a circle. This helps us also understand, like, why the Tai Chi, why it's circular, why the relationship of the circle, why this relationship of not simply a line, but the motion of the wheel is so important, because it lets us recognize that we're not actually in a condition where tomorrow is what we are going to be, but actually, like weather and the condition of seasons, each condition us. And so in this wheel, the seed, we are first born into the outer wheel, and we harden. This is known as a Saturn return in astrology, meaning that the first turn of the wheel, the first 28 years of our life, or the first in this key of the major arcana, the first 22 keys, are like when, let's say, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years old. Each is a very full experience at that age. And you wouldn't say any age is incomplete, but each age creates the condition for the next encounter, the next unfoldment, the next way of putting it together. And that's where we're at now as human beings, because the question is, how do we put our story together? How do we understand our structure, not our belief systems? And the key here, because it's a library, the library says, look, all the different beliefs are in the library because they're human. But at the basis of this human is a structure. It's an archetypal pattern. That's why whether it's the rune, the I Chings, the Kabbalah, the tarot, these are symbolical languages. They're not belief systems. They're structures by which they help us meditate in terms of, how do I have a conversation with this depth? And that's why even the structure here of first moving in the way that we would say we're going down into the roots, as Jung would say, into the unconscious, into the deep unconscious, into that which is in the dark unknown, which is, of course, where so many are afraid of. but we're at a point where there's no further to go. In a way, we've come full circle. And so the sense that I can get out of a condition is no longer the question, but how do I get into it? And that's when we start to understand the darkness and difficulty of our life that has led us down oftentimes into hell, seemingly. But not to stay there, but to learn from those difficult conditions. We have to adapt. It's like a captain of a ship. You have to, you don't expect a storm, you don't know how to respond to it, but because you have, you've created within you the condition, a new strength, a new capacity. And so much of this story now is about, first we move into the outer, meaning that we're born into a structure. But then we start to move inward, and this is the other key of the Saturn return, is that we create a form that can finally, like the piano, the structure, the instrument, we can hold who we are as opposed to who that person is, at least hopefully. And why this helps us, it's a bit like actors on stage, that my character is different from yours, but yours is essential to the play, like a book in the library. Your story is part of a great story, as mine is part of a story. And if we look at that story now as part of a fundamental structure of who we are, then we start to trust our context, meaning that the home element here is that how do we find the way back to the center of the wheel? And I like to tell people that first we start in one direction, the body. And then we mature, but then we start to move into, and we move inward, we move down, inward. This is also the lunar mysteries, meaning we move into the dark unconscious. Because we're going to have to learn how to swim. Up here it's walking on land and looking at things as other people look. But to get to know oneself, we have to close our eyes and go into our emotional body, our deep, in a sense, our depths. And that takes a lot of, well, in a way, courage or insistence at any rate. Because what we're doing is we're really rooting the tree in our unique darkness. Because in rooting it, and you could use artists as an example, that Cézanne rooted his knowing in a different dark form, different prima materia, so to speak. And from that, this tree grew because his life was shaped one way and he went another way. So the tree of who he was grew to blossom as a unique universe of Cézanne. And the same thing when you look at any life, it anchors itself in a unique soil, of a unique center, a unique seed. And from the seed then will grow the individual that will ultimately stand upright. Because the journey inward of the wheel leads us down, but it also brings us down off of our, essentially, standing upright, back to our knees, back to our humility, back to becoming seed. Meaning that when we get to the center of ourselves, it's not how do I do this for my neighbor, what's wrong with someone else, but where do I begin to grow from? And this is at the center of the wheel, like this eye at the top of the head, this greater wonder, this greater center around which the whole human story has forever spun like an atom spinning out into a world of shared reality in different histories and stories. But like a piano, the structure is always the same, although the music can be played infinitely differently. So our music now is we have come full circle. We have experienced the journey of the wheel, meaning that our outer world is established in terms of form. And our journey inward into the depths of things is also a great journey that so many have been on. You could argue this is the journey of anguish, and what do we do with it? Well, now in this story here, in this unique story of the hieroglyph of the human soul, in the unique story of the archetypes that return back home, back to where we honor the question of who are we, not in order to create a weapon with which to create misery for someone else or to blame someone else, but like great theater, to say, if we put on a story that allows us to stand at the center of the wheel, so I stand at the center of my wheel and you stand at the center of your wheel, but this life, like a wheel, is spinning around us. And as it spins, it becomes as a gyroscope. And if you think about a gyroscope, think about it. You can tilt a gyroscope, but it always finds its way back up into center. And so this story is that the center here is not simply my heart, but the human heart, and the question of coming full circle in order to finally stand upright within the context of where we live and with whom we love, but also in the library of a shared humanity that says you will recognize when you stand here that in the library, in the story of being human, these are also all your brothers and sisters, because like your family, for good and for difficult, we have shaped one another forever. We have come full circle. We have journeyed back to the center of the wheel. And the question now is, where do we begin now that we are seeding? Now that we are not being magicians and trying to trick, but we are being a Magus and trying to plant. Let's plant a seed where we live and trust the spin of time and the journey of the human story to hold us as this home holds us, like the library holds us, with a resource that says you are the outcome of an impossible dream. So dream more heroically, because when you dream from where you live and love, you realize you don't want to leave the spin of things. You just want to find the center of it.